Welcome everyone to the tie breaks of round 5 of the FIDE World Cup 2025. On your screen is Sam Shankland. Sam has been having an incredible World Cup until now. He beat Ivanchuk in round 2, and by the way, here is his opponent Daniil Dubov, a tough opponent. In the 5th round, he beat Ivanchuk, he beat Vidit Gujarati, Sam Shankland beat Ivanchuk, Vidit, Rapport, and now faces Dubov. Meanwhile, Dubov eliminated Praggnanandhaa in the previous round, so it's going to be a fascinating clash. Sam opens with d4 and Dubov plays his knight to f6, pawn to c4, e6 played by Dubov, knight comes out to f3, and we have the queen's gambit declined. Bishop e7 played, and one of Dubov's strategy has always been to play very calmly, to not be too ambitious, to keep fighting and basically take the game to shorter time controls as much as he can. b6 played, now Sam plays queen to c2. We have a very normal structure here that happens in these openings. C takes d5. You can see that black's bishop is always an issue. He takes with the knight, so basically the bishop comes out on a6 trying to trade itself. h4, wow, that's a very interesting move that Sam Shankland plays. Bishop takes f1, king takes f1, and now you can see a little bit of harmony in white's position because he did not castle. The rook is active here, the king is getting to safety via perhaps g3 and king g2. Knight d7 played, and even though white has lost his bishop and doubled the pawns, he has control over the e5 and c5 squares. Pawn goes to c6 and Dubov is trying to go to c7 and play c5, but f5 played by Sam, just going straight in. Dubov takes, queen takes f5. The position is around even here. Knight to f6 played, and the knight jumps to e5, attacking the pawn on c6. We have rook to c8 and h5, threatening h6, perhaps softening up the king side, but Dubov doesn't really care. He goes bishop b4. Maybe more prudent was to go h6 here, but bishop b4, rook h3. The rook not only defends this way but is also ready to join the attack with rook g3. Bishop takes c3, maybe a very direct way to play here. B takes c3, and now h6 played. Pawn to c4, so Sam playing not just on the king side but also in the center. Rook e8 played here. And now do you go g4? Yes, he does. Pawn to g4. The game is getting very exciting. Rook to c7, Dubov trying to hang in there. And now rook e3, just controlling everything in the center. Queen c8 offering a queen trade. Maybe you have to take it. Yeah, he takes on c8. And even this endgame looks quite promising for white. Rook takes c8. And now pawn to a4, gaining more space. You can see how white has a lot of space in the position, but black is solid. To beat Dubov from such a position, not at all easy. King e2 played by Sam, and Dubov goes knight d7, again offering the knights for trade. Every time a piece gets traded, white's sort of space advantage keeps increasing. Knight jumps to f8 with the plan of knight e6, so pawn to d5, takes. Rook jumps in to c2, check, and he brings his king up. Rook d6, stopping the d pawn from moving ahead. Maybe rook d4 and knight c4 is possible. He goes rook d4, and now he goes knight to h7, a big mistake. It was important to go rook c5 so as to put pressure here and then break with b5, but knight h7 and now knight c4. You are breaking the blockade and starting to push the d pawn down the board. finds it. Knight to c4, rook goes back to d8, and now rook e7 is very powerful, but pushing the pawn is also very tempting. He pushes it. d6 played. Now knight f8, perhaps the only move to hang in there. Dubov comes back, knight f8. Again, the defense is going to be incredibly strong, so Sam has to be careful. But knight e5 next, attacking here. Knight to e6, rook e4 played. And now pawn to a6, that's a big mistake. He should have played rook c3, king e2, maybe king f8 here, and black is still hanging in there with rook d6 threatened. But instead a6 means now rook takes e6, f e6 and knight e5. Very strong idea, but he doesn't find it. He goes d7, that's also pretty good. Check to the king, and Sam comes back, king e2. Dubov now goes king to f8, gives a check, and here's the key calculation that Sam has made, which is to win a piece with f5. Yes, and you're going to win a complete piece there. This is the first time that Dubov has looked shaky at this event, and now Sam is completely winning here. AB, he gives up the exchange just to unpin his knight on e6 and takes on b5, and now very simple, just go to rook e4 and you win an entire knight there because it's pinned again. And Sam thinks for a bit. A slightly brain fade moment for Sam here, who's played an insanely good game, but he goes rook c8 check, missing the opportunity. Knight d8 quickly played by Dubov, although in reality nothing much has changed. The position still remains winning for white. Rook comes to c7, king f8, and Sam could play this slowly, bring his king up, but there's also a very direct way here, which is starting with g5, h takes g5, and now rook to c8 played. King comes up, and you can simply take on d8 and play f6, gf6, h6. You're just queening here. Although black has 4 pawns, they are going nowhere, and Dubov resigns. Sam Shankland hands Dubov, and Dubov is like, you could play rook e4 instead of rook c8 check, and I would have lost the knight. And well, it was anyway winning there. So first loss for Dubov here, and Sam wins the game. How will Dubov make a comeback now is the big question. He will have the white pieces, and generally his strategy in this tournament has been to be on the defense with white, and here he is back on the board adjusting his pieces. You have to change your strategy based on the tournament situation. I think Daniil Dubov is capable of doing that, but will he manage to do it this game against Sam? Somehow the World Cups have been incredible for Sam Shankland. He had reached the quarterfinals previously, where he was knocked out by Sergei Karyakin, which was a very tough World Cup for him. But now he's showing his class once again. This time he has the black pieces now. Daniil Dubov, let's see how he reacts with white. Opens the game with knight to f3, knight f6, and all that Sam needs is a draw here. Dubov goes pawn to c4, c5. Choosing the opening carefully is a must in such situations, because if you choose something which is drawish in nature, it will be very difficult to make a comeback. Knight takes d5, and Sam has many options here. He can go g6, e6, knight c6, d5. I mean, many possibilities. He goes for the simplest, perhaps d5, where you lead to a symmetrical position. Knight takes d5, Oh, white keeps a small edge here, could play knight to f3. He plays e4, knight f6 back, attacking the pawn here. Knight comes to c3. And now e5, right into the heart of the position here. Bishop b5 check, bishop d7. He takes on d7. Queen takes on d7. And Dubov plays knight c2. I wonder how good of a weapon this is in a must-win game. It feels like white has a nagging edge here, which is interesting way to play, but doesn't feel enough. Black's position is quite solid. Bishop comes to g5, threatening to take on f6 and then kind of play on the light squares is the idea here. Knight comes to d7. All of this has been seen before. I mean, if you jump in knight d5, I have rook c8 to stop any checks here. King e2 played. We have bishop to c5, just developing the bishop to a good square. And now rook h d1. Putting pressure on the knight on d7. f6 played. And bishop e3. Taking on e3 makes sense. If e3 takes into control the d4 square, but still, I mean, doesn't seem right. It weakens the e4 pawn. He takes on e3 with the knight. This allows the black knight to jump in. King goes to f1. And now knight jumps into c5. It's interesting that black hasn't touched the king nor the two rooks until now. Knight to e6 played. Another good decision by Sam, not taking the knight here, which after ef5 would have given him a good position here to white. Rook a c1 played by Dubov. He gets up. He's kind of trying to show his confidence here, but Sam now castles short just to connect his rooks. We have knight to d5 and rook a d8 calmly played here. One of the things that Sam does incredibly well is calculate with precision, and I think that is something which really helps him in this matchup against Dubov. Look at this, knight e7 played, now king f7, and it does feel a bit risky that the rook is entering in on c7, but look at him there. He's just focused, calm, cool, collected, plays king e8. And now this is very risky for someone, knight f5, knight d5, goes knight d5 and rook f7. He's ready with his response. By the way, just so that you know, rook b7 doesn't work here because of rook f7. So knight d5, rook f7, rook to c3. He goes rook d7 and plays rook to c1. King comes up to f7 and h4 played, trying to gain space. Now very symmetrical position, but I would still say white has a small edge because has the control of the open file, while black is looking at a closed file here with his knights. So knight c6 played, and the idea is to open up this file with knight e7. That's the plan. King g2 played. Sam goes for knight e7 to trade. Dubov says, I don't trade. Knight c6. He says, you don't enter now. I will enter down the d file from rook d2. Rook goes to b3, attacking the b7 pawn. Knight jumps into d4, rook a3. Pawn to a6. Look at Dubov, how he's trying here. Knight jumps in. Rook comes up to d6. And now he enters with a check. Rook d7 to stop any counter play, wanting to trade the rooks, but he comes in, and knight c6, another nice move. It's amazing how there's absolutely no counter play that's been given. He goes rook c8, and I think again, he goes knight e7, trading here. Takes king e7. The only problem is the white rook now can enter in with rook h8. If you go g6, perhaps the other rook could enter, can become dangerous. Instead, rook d2, fantastic move. Rook goes to b3, defending the pawn. But b5 by Sam. And now he loses his first pawn here. Is Sam actually in trouble? Maybe not. Rook e2. And the idea is to attack the e4 pawn, but also the other rook is coming to d2. Rook a3. Dubov is going after the a6 pawn. Rook d6 defends it calmly. Rook h8. And now rook to e4. Rook a8 played, trying to win the pawn there. And Sam, who has 3 minutes left on the clock, Dubov, who has 36 seconds, which means Sam also has made use of his time much better than his opponent. He goes rook a4 to trade, king f8. Can we go to c3? Trying to mate him somehow. He goes there, instantly blocked. Takes, rook c7. The final hope for Dubov is, does that exist or not? Rook b6, takes on b2, a3 played. Dubov would love to put his rook on a4 and put pressure on a6. Rook b3, a4, and now rook to a3. King comes up. In a dream world, white would love his king to enter. Rook f3, putting pressure on f2, king g2. He goes back. And Dubov goes h5. Now it's all about control on your nerves here for Sam Shankland. He knows he can win this game. Win this match. He just has to draw this game. Rook f3. Check, king goes back, and now rook comes back to c2 to defend it. Can we go rook a3? Goes king h7. He's trying to come back from here. King comes up to g4. And now e4 played by Sam. Dubov attacks the pawn. And Sam brings his king up. His point is simple. I'm threatening f5. If you take, I take on f2. He takes on f2. Rook e6 played. Rook to c2. So that if rook takes pawn, I give you a check and I pick up the h5 pawn. Takes, check. King f5. And you take here. Although Dubov has made some progress, it's not enough. King goes back to h6, rook a7, rook check, king f4, check, king f3, f5 played. And now rook a4, a6. Carefully plays his pawn to g6 so that whatever happens, his king will have a cover. King g5, king comes to d3, and now this is, would have been a draw if Dubov would have played carefully, but he needs to win. So he's actually giving up his g3 pawn, risking it, and it's just now completely winning for black. f4, king b5. I mean, what you want as black is just g5, g4, and just sack the rook for the pawn, and you're totally winning. Sam just trying to calculate this through, plays g5, and Dubov can't do much. Even if he moves his rook away, he's lost. He resigns here. Sam Shankland gets in the win. A big one for him. He moves on to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, where he will take on Andrei Esipenko. But what a tournament he's been having. Ivanchuk, Vidit, Rapport and Dubov. Man, that is one of the best lineup you can beat to reach the quarterfinals. Truly deserving here is Sam Shankland, and Dubov, who looked almost bulletproof in this tournament with his strategy, was somehow shown holes in his entire plan that was there in the World Cup. Kudos to Sam for achieving that, and we hope to see more of Dubov in the days to come.